Hello my lovelies and welcome back to my channel. Today is day 2 of our Sinclair Alba sew along. Today we'll be doing steps 1 through 4, so the main steps 1 through 4, which means we'll be creating that collar with the pleats, we'll be adding the interfacing, and we'll also be adding those pockets on the main print. Let's start with the collar. So for the collar, grab your 2 pieces. You should have one tall piece that you've put markings on. You've put 2, 4, 6 markings plus the seam allowance if you did it. If not, you should have 6 markings on both sides. And you'll also need your collar lining just to double check the size for now. And that is a lot shorter than this. So let's start by creating the pleats. Take one side and you're going to bring one pleat, one point that you've marked, and match it with the other one, with the one next to it. So I'm going to be repeating this a few times just to make sure everyone can see very well. And I'm going to add one pin. Okay, so next, the first mark is just a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance and the 3/8 of an inch for this side. So that doesn't involve the pleat in any way. But all these 6 will create the pleat. So now we've matched pleat 1 to 2. Now we're going to go to the other 2 points and we're going to take the fabric, match these 2 points by folding like so, and putting a pin. It's very important that you put those pleats going in the same directions on both sides, but we'll work on that. So right now we've created the first 2 pleats. We have one more, so you have 2 marking points left. You're going to take this, fold it over, so see those little dots match here, and you're going to fold it and put a pin. So now you should have something looking like this on one side of the collar. So 3 pleats and then your sides. This one is a little taller here than this one on the bottom. Okay, so now the reason I said grab your lining piece, in my case is the main fabric, because you do want to double check that the lining and the main match, and they do. Okay, so double check that this matches. Okay, now go on the other side and do the exact same thing, making sure that the pleats go in the same direction. So if we brought this point here on top of this one, we're going to do the exact same thing. You don't want to take this point and bringing on top of this, because then it's going to be all twisted. Okay, so if you brought the top one down here, we'll do the exact same thing and put a pin, and then we're going to triple check that it's in the same direction once it's done. Don't skip double checking your work. Okay, see, now I know it goes in the same direction. I see the folds on both ends. So let's continue on this side. Again, from this side, I bring this point here, this marking here, next to the next one, on top of it, and fold. They're not hard to make it. I'm telling you, once you've made one, pleats are very easy, and I love the way they look on skirts and collars and everything. Okay, there you go. So now you have a beautiful fold. Last one, we're going to take this fifth point, bringing over the 6th, like so. Okay, so now it's folded. Again, double check that it's the same as this, and it is. So now, one last look. The folds are all going in the same direction, like this. So we are good to start stitching. So you should have something like this. We're going to go to the sewing machine right now and we're going to baste this in place. We want to keep them in place just to make sure it's easier to work with afterwards when we attach the lining to the main. So let's move on to the sewing machine. Take your pleated collars that you've made and place it under your presser foot. We're going to be using a ballpoint needle, and for now I'm just basting in place. So I'm using a long stitch length just to baste this in place. I do not sew over pins. I know a lot of you do. You are braver than I am. I remove the pins as I sew. So now this is basted. Let's do the same thing on the other side. To keep everything in place. And I'm basting with about 1/4 inch seam allowance because the collar has a 3/8 inch seam allowance when we attach the lining. So this basting stitch will be inside. Speaking of lining, let me grab my lining piece. And now I have my lining upside down, okay, because I want it to be correct when I wear it. So upside down if you're using a directional fabric. And I'm going to place my my main so it matches on the side seams, but I'm not going to sew the side seams quite yet. Okay, I'm just pinning it in place. The length should be the same. And now the short sides will be the same as well because of the pleats. These are right sides together. Okay. And let's do the same thing on the other side just to keep everything in place. I'm going to stitch it down with a straight stitch. It doesn't need any stretch, so I can use a straight stitch for this step. And I'm going to sew only this long part, only on one of the long sides, and I'm also matching my notches here that I put, and just putting a couple of clips where the notches are. Okay, so I'm doing a 3 length, and I'm sewing again just the long side right now. I am using athletic knit, so whatever waviness that I will see because of my sewing, once I press it and steam it, it will disappear. So I'm not worried about any kind of waviness. If your machine does not like the knit that you're using, you might consider using a Teflon foot or using some water-soluble stabilizer in between your presser feet and your knit. This way the machine won't eat your fabric. It also depends on the weight. Being that this pattern calls for medium weight, it will definitely be better than using a lightweight knit on your machine. Okay, so now we're going to understitch. Understitch means you're going to stitch the seam allowance that you have here, you're going to stitch it on the lining. So in my case, the lining is this main print, so the one without the folds. I'm going to take the seam allowance right here, fold it towards the lining, and then I'm going to understitch, which means stitching again the seam allowance towards the lining and on the lining, and that's it. This will help the lining stay in place and not peek through when you wear your jacket on the collar. Beautiful. I'll show you how it looks like from the outside, because I do believe I have accidentally left white thread in my bobbin. Yeah, so you can see it very well. It wasn't on purpose, but it's not a big deal. So you can see right here the underline, the understitching is on the lining part. So now we're going to again fold and stitch one side, only one end of your collar. Okay, we're going to match again the side like we did before, right sides together, and you're going to stitch only one end of the collar, because on the other one we need to add some interfacing because the zipper will be there. It is very important that you check with the pattern to see, depending on how you cut your fabric, if your zipper will go towards the right or will go towards the left. If you've cut your fabric right side up, it will go one way. If you've cut your fabric right side down, so wrong side up like I have yesterday, it will go the other way. There is no right or wrong way. It's just you need to be cautious of that when you add your collar. So now we're going to stitch this side seam with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So the seam allowance throughout the pattern is 1/4 of an inch. However, the collar is 3/8 of an inch. Probably because of the presence of the pleats. So now you want to take some scissors and snip the corner here. Okay, you snip that corner right here, and now you're going to turn. This way your corner will be nice and crisp and sharp because it doesn't have the excess bulk. So if you want, you can also try to understitch the lining here, if you can. You won't be able to go all the way because of the way it's sewn, but a little bit, just to keep those pleats going towards the lining piece. And maybe I'll remember to change the thread in the bobbin to a black thread, maybe. Oh well. Okay, I will go give it a good steam press. So now see, it's understitched here. Beautiful. I'll give it a good steam press. This way it will stay nice and tight here and no waviness. You see the lining is stitched here. So now because of the understitching, the lining won't peek out. Okay, this is it for this part of the collar. We're going to now talk about the interfacing and how to add the interfacing. We are back at the table because I have used my interfacing, so I wanted to talk to you about that a little bit. Very important to not skip interfacing your Alba. Interface all the patterns that require interfacing, because I can promise you, your end result will look a lot better than with a wavy zipper, a wavy pocket, interface where required. So let's see where it's required. First, you want to interface your main outside pieces, okay? We're going to add a strip of interfacing that is 1 inch by the length of your outer parts. So you have 2 of them. If you see, this is my outside fabric, and I've interfaced it. Let me see if I lower the exposure a little bit, if you can see the interfacing better. So see, I added 1 inch of interfacing here on the outer part. You can see this strip. So you need to have the diagonal part where the zipper goes on both outer parts with 1 inch of interfacing. So it depends on how long and what size you've made, but both have 1 inch. Then you will need the extension part, the same thing on the extension part. So the one with the two rectangles coming out, but the extension, not the facing. So this is piece number 5. It might be easier to just put a number on them with a water soluble pen, so you know which one's which. This is piece number 5 that has again 1 inch of interfacing right here. Then you need the facing that has the short side. So you have 2 facing pieces, one that has a long side that we don't interface, and you have one that has a short side, that is the one that has the one like the rectangle here, and that we interface with a 1 inch strip. So these 2 are the same length. This is the facing for the for the part that's larger on the diagonal. Okay, so we have these 2, these 2. Then you want to interface the pocket part on both your outer parts, because you have 2 pockets, one on the left, one on the right, okay? So you want to interface that with a piece that's 1 5/8 of an inch here. So now on your main part, you have interfacing on the zipper part and on the pocket part. Same thing on the other side. Okay, let's put those aside. Then you want to interface the front of your waistband. So your waistband, remember when we cut yesterday, had a piece on fold for the back and then 2 pieces on the front. You want to interface the front part. Basically, we're interfacing everywhere there will be a zipper at one point. There will be zipper touching it at one point. So the front of your waistbands, this is the waistband, the front will be interfaced, okay? Because again, this will go on the bottom like this, and we'll have a zipper here. So you want to make sure that that is interfaced. Again, I'm interfacing with Geeky Fuse Cotton Soft. If you don't have that, you can use SF101. You need a woven interfacing. You need a non-stretch. So we're not going to be using tricot interfacing for this. You need it firm to hold the zipper in place. Okay, then you're going to want to interface your pockets where you have that cutout on your pockets. See, you have that L cutout. You want to interface on the outside. So again, you're going to cut a rectangle that's 1 5/8 of an inch, so a little over 1.5 inches, and then cut out the piece there. So you want those 2 to have interfacing as well. Again, to have a crisp, nice pocket. Don't skip that. And last but not least, and the most beautiful and satisfying, because I went ahead and pressed my pleats on the collar. You can tell me this is not the most satisfying thing you've seen. Oh, I adore a good, beautiful pleat. So, I digress. One side is stitched. We've stitched it a few minutes ago, okay? Now you're going to go on the other side and you're going to open it up and you're going to measure it. Mine is almost 13 inches. Okay, so you're going to measure this side that has the lining on one side and has the pleats on the other side. So you're going to measure this one and you're going to cut a strip of interfacing that is 1 inch by whatever measurement you have here. And then you're going to go to your iron and fuse it just like you fused everything else all the way, keeping the pleats down. See, the pleats are still folded, the interfacing is on top of the pleats. Okay, and then I pressed it like this and did a nice press just so I can admire those beautiful folds. So now, if I put everything on the right side, you'll see that my jacket will have the zipper like this. There we go. So yours may be going like this. Again, it depends on how you cut the fabric. If you've cut the fabric with the wrong side up, your zipper will go like this. And your collar will go like this. If you've cut the fabric right side up, then it's going to go the other way. It's not a right or wrong way. It just depends on how you laid your fabric when you cut. Okay, so now I know that this part with the pleats will go here, and see I have interfacing here, and I'll have a zipper here. Okay, so now that everything is interfaced, let's go ahead and work on the pocket. Okay, now that everything is fused, all the interfacing is added, let's work on the pockets, which is the last step for today. So take your pocket lining, the one that has the cutout here, and place it on the main fabric, right sides together like so, matching the edge on the side and matching also the bottom. Okay, and of course do the same thing on the other side. We're going to match the bottom raw edge okay, and now we're going to go ahead and stitch with 1/4 inch seam allowance like so. I'll show you here so it's easier to see if I draw it, and then I'll stitch over it. So 1/4 inch seam allowance, we're going to stitch like so. So one line, and one line. Same thing on the other side. Alright, so we are at the sewing machine, and I'm going to do the stitching that I showed you earlier. So with 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm going to stitch pivot, and this is where having that interfacing fused come into place, because now with the interfacing there, I'm basically treating this knit like a woven, because it's interfaced on both sides right now. So it stays in place, it doesn't stretch, beautiful. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to snip the fabric that is in excess here from the main print. Just trim that off. Okay. And now where the corners are, I'm going to snip all the way to the corners without cutting the thread. I'm just putting some notches here so you can see better. Okay, so I snipped here all the way to where the stitching is without cutting the thread, as close as you can possibly get it. The closer you can get it to that corner where where the needle pivoted, the nicer it will look when you flip it in the next step. Okay, see? And now when you take the facing and you put it on the other side, it will make a nice crisp U looking pocket opening, like so. Obviously it needs a little pressing, and I will also top stitch it. But because I snipped those corners, now it looks beautiful. Don't ditch your iron. Use it because it will help you. I'm just doing a little finger press right now. Just so I can show you how it looks like, and then we're going to top stitch all around. Where we put those skips. See, this is what it looks like. Really pretty, right? So let's go ahead and top stitch around it. And as you can see, I'm still using my sewing machine, and I still have white thread. We'll call that accent details, because I still forgot to change my thread. Top stitching about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And because I have all that interfacing, it looks so nice and crisp. Gorgeous. Let me show you. See how gorgeous it looks? So now, turning it with the wrong side up of the main fabric, but right side of the facing, you want to take your pocket bag, so this one, and you're going to add it here, and you're going to want to stitch this in place around the curve. So for now, I'm just putting a couple of pins right here, and then I will quickly go to the serger and stitch all around the curved side, and then baste in place the rest. So here, you see, I match my notches here, and you want to stitch that curve of the pocket, and I will run a quick serger thread through it, serger stitch. Just because it's faster. Okay, so this is with the pocket serged, and now on the outer part, I'm going to go ahead and baste in place along the raw edge, just to keep everything in place so it doesn't move when I continue the construction of the jacket. If you're comfortable enough, you can just leave those pins in, but you'll make your life easier, and if you just take this extra step to baste in place. Okay, I'm top stitching here where the pocket has been created. So now I'm continuing with the basting on the other side. And now the pattern gives you two options. You can stop right here and the pocket is created, because as you can see, this is stitched, so now your pocket is good and functional. See, my hand is right in it. That's it, you can stop here. If you want to tack this pocket into the jacket, you can go ahead and stitch around here or along the curve. You can use a reverse cover stitch, so you can take this to your cover stitch machine and working from the wrong side, do a stitching all around the curve that will show here as a reverse cover stitch, like a decorative stitch. You can use a decorative stitch on your sewing machine, or like I said, you can just simply let it stay like this, and it's all secure. It doesn't need to go in on the like main part. So we're going to repeat the exact same steps that I showed you, exactly the same on the other side of the jacket, because you have two pockets, right? So we're gonna take this, sew 1/4 inch, snip, turn, top stitch, add the pocket back, and that is it for today. So today you have worked on the collar, you have added your interfacing and created the pockets. So great job today, everyone. When you're done, snap a photo of your progress and post it in the day 2 photo comments of the Sew Along album. You can find the Alba Sew Along album in the Backstitch Backroom group on Facebook. And that will be your check-in for today. I'll see you back here tomorrow when we'll be doing steps 5 through 10, I believe. So see you back here tomorrow. Bye.